If we don't know reality, if we don't know truth, if we can't access truth, somebody has to access it for us. We need truth. And what are their incentives, right? If I tell you, if I tell anybody, you are my guide to truth, tell me what to do. Well, how do they get their truths? They don't have access to the world of forms. They don't speak to God. No pope has ever spoken to God, right? Because God doesn't exist. So it's their whims, it's their emotions. And what are they going to ask you to do? Well, sacrifice to me. Give me power and sacrifice to me. And whoever puts himself in that position of, I know the truth and you don't, has already told you that what they're really after is power. Because they're obviously lying because they have no special capabilities. But think about, I guess I'm inspired by my talk on Opa, which I'll talk about in a minute. But think about the fact, everything really does boil down to epistemology in the sense that once you are convinced by a particular epistemology, that is going to a large extent frame your ethics and ultimately your politics. And epistemology really is the driver of the rest of the system of ideas. I don't know. If I talked about Sam Harris and his, what I think it means that Sam Harris says that there is no I, or that he's discovered that there's no free will. You know how he discovers all this? Where does he get his truth from? It occurred to me while reading Opa how this works. You know how Sam Harris says, and more and more people are now saying, you really know the truth when you take LSD. What? When you go on a trip. He says, right, when I go on LSD, I suddenly discover that there's no I. There's no me. There really is a collective consciousness. I suddenly discover that I have no free will, that I disappear. Right? And it's not just Sam Harris, other people, and certainly I think in certain Eastern religions and people who deeply meditate and all this stuff, they all say that when they're in the state, whatever that state is, whether it's drug-induced or whether it's just a meditation-induced or whatever it is, their own being dissolves away into the whatever, right? Into the common consciousness of everybody. But what is that, right? These are people who think, this is Kant and this is Plato, right? They need the drugs, or they need this form of meditation to basically eviscerate their senses. They need the drugs and the meditation to basically give them direct access, or what they call direct access to reality. Because they believe, as Kant taught us, that our senses distort what we see. And since they're intrinsicists, they believe truth is out there. It's there somewhere. Our senses don't allow us to see the truth. But if we can take away our senses, if we can make our senses go away, if we can make our reason go away, if we can make our mind go away, if we could put just a little bit of LSD inside so that eviscerate our capacity to, in a sense, interpret what's out there, then we can see real reality. And this is Plato. It's just a shortcut. Instead of studying philosophy and becoming a philosopher king, you take some LSD and you connect to the world of forms immediately. But it's the impact of Kant, who says, you can't see the real world because of your senses and because of your reason. Okay, well, let's do away with my senses. Let's do away with my reason. And they believe somehow that LSD does that instead of just playing games with, chemical reactions inside your brain. And by doing that, truth implants itself on you, right? So this is the intrinsicist's dream, right? And it is a dream, of course, because it's under LSD, so it's not reality. They supposedly get the truth. They can only get the truth. They believe the absolute truth exists only when their mind is neutralized by drugs or by being in a particular state of semi-sleep, I guess, through meditation. And, that's how they discover the truth that there's no free will. That's how they discover the truth that I doesn't exist. There's a collective consciousness or anything, or any stuff, anything like that. So it really is interesting how they take their intrinsicism seriously. And of course, what is every intrinsicist? What's the kind of the counter to intrinsicism? It's subjectivism. So there's intrinsicism, subjectivism. But really, there isn't anything like intrinsicism, because reality doesn't imprint anything on you. There's no truth out there that, bam, just. So everybody is a subjectivist. I mean, all these people who ignore reason and ignore objective reality. So it's all subjectivism. So what Sam Harris or any of these guys actually discover when they're in this meditative state or when they're taking LSD is just their emotions, just their whims, just their bizarre, sense of whatever. Somebody else takes an LSD trip, sees something completely different. That's their truth now. But it's just subjective. It's just whatever. It's just based on emotion, based on whim, based on whatever your subconscious happens to be offering up to your mind when it's shut down, basically, when it's like a dream state. Right? We all dream and have weird dreams, and we don't confuse those dreams for some bizarre reason with reality. There's a dream and there's reality. And LSD is nothing more than a sophisticated, a drug-induced dream, right? A state in which you are basically not in control. Yes, there's no I when you're doing LSD, because the control has been neutralized by drugs. But that's not reality. That's fantasy. That's your mind on a trip. It's, as Thessie says, it's just a trip. By the way, LSD, for those of you who don't know, is very popular in Silicon Valley. Microdosing of a variety of different hallucinatory drugs is popular. They actually sometimes do these weekends where a bunch of friends will get together. They'll maybe twice a year, and they'll trip out on LSD for a weekend or something. I don't know what they trip out on, mushrooms or whatever. And it's kind of a thing these days in terms of how you connect to reality, because you take away all this useless stuff like your senses and your mind. That's very distortive, and it shows how Kant's influence is so dramatic.
And to begin with, I wonder if I can ask you to capsulize. I know this is difficult. Can I ask you to capsulize your philosophy? What is Randism?
First of all, I do not call it Randism, and I don't like that name. I call it objectivism.
All right.
Meaning a philosophy based on objective reality. Now let me explain it as briefly as I can. First, my philosophy is based on the concept that reality exists as an objective absolute, that man's mind, reason, is his means of perceiving it, and that man needs a rational morality. I am primarily the creator of a new code of morality which has so far been believed impossible, namely a morality not based on faith. Not on faith, not on arbitrary whim, not on emotion, not on arbitrary edict, mystical or social, but on reason, a morality which can be proved by means of logic, which can be demonstrated to be true and necessary.
All right, all right.
Now, may I define what my morality is?
All right.
Because this is merely an introduction. My morality is based on man's life as a standard of value. And since man's mind is his basic means of survival, I hold that if man wants to live on Earth and to live as a human being, he has to hold reason as an absolute, by which I mean that he has to hold reason as his only guide to action, and that he must live by the independent judgment of his own mind, that his highest moral purpose is the achievement of his own happiness, and that he must not force other people nor accept their right to force him. that each man must live as an end in himself and follow his own rational self-interest.
May I?
All right, before we go on, reminder, please like the show. We've got 163 live listeners right now, 30 likes. That should be at least 100. I figure at least 100 of you actually like the show. Maybe there are like 60 of the Matthews out there who hate it, but at least the people who are liking it, you know, I want to see a thumbs up. There you go. Start liking it. I want to see that go to 100. All it takes is a click of a thing. Whether you're looking at this, and you know the likes matter. It's not an issue of my ego. It's an issue of the algorithm. The more you like something, the more the algorithm likes it. So, you know, and if you don't like the show, give it a thumbs down. Let's see your actual views being reflected in the likes. But if you like it, don't just sit there. Help get the show promoted. Of course, you should also share, and you can support the show at JeronBrookShow.com/support, or on Patreon or Subscribestar or Locals. And show your support for the work, for the value hopefully you're receiving from this. And of course, don't forget, if you're not a subscriber, even if you just come here to troll, or even if you're here like Matthew to defend Marx, then you should subscribe, because that way you'll know when to show up. You'll know what shows are on, when they're on. You'll get notified, right? So, yes, like, share, subscribe, support. Like, share, subscribe, support. There you go. Easy. Do one or all of those, please.